All right, fellow coders, here is your video instructions for creating your own class. What you're going to do is these notes are on the website. You're going to create a class called Square. You're also going to create a client class called TestSquare. Now you can also know that you can go to Chapter 9 and look at some of the instructions that are in Chapter 9 about classes. Right now we're just going to go right into Eclipse and we're going to create a class called Square. So we'll be in Eclipse, File, we're going to need to make a new Java project, and I'm going to go ahead and call that Square project. And let's go ahead and finish that. We've got a Square project. We need a new, so right click on source, new class. And we're going to go ahead and call that class SQUARE, Square. Okay, I'll leave the rest of these as defaults and we'll finish. And we have a new class called Square. There it is. And we also need to make a new client class. See the notes? Called TestSquare. That's going to have a main method. That'll look a lot like Hello World right now. So if we right click on source and go to new class, we can have Eclipse generate the main method for us. Public static void main, and let's call this the client class TestSquare. Let's click finish, and we've got a class called TestSquare. The notes here tell us to declare and initialize a variable of type square. We'll call it SQR, and then we'll print it. So we know how to declare variables. Square SQR, initialize it equal to a new square. This is how we invoke the constructor and initialize our object. And of course, printing we all know is system.out.println, and let's printline SQR. You can go ahead and save this and run this, and what do we see? There's our square. I'll talk about this isn't very useful right now. I'll talk about what that number means later. And what do we need to do? Go back to your notes. Well, we need to write a method called toString, and we all know how to write methods. Public, return type, name of method, parameter list. So let's put that in. This is going to go, where did it say? In class Square. So we go to class Square. We're going to put in a method here called public string toString. There's our parameter list. And we, of course, need to return a string. So let's put quotes square. And there we have it. Now we'll see something a bit more appropriate if we run it. We'll see square. Okay. Here we go. Back to our stuff here. Our notes. We're going to look now. What does it say? In class Square. What is the state of a square? Every square has a side length, right? All squares are the same shape, but everyone will have a different side length. So we need an instance variable to hold the state of the square. Let's create one. Instance variables are always private, and they're going to go up here. Instance variables, also known as fields. All right. Fields, and here's a private double side length. And when we print this here, square with side, let's output the side length. Okay. Now when we print it, we'll see a square with side length 0. Okay. Now notice we're not running class Square, we're running the client code, TestSquare. What else do we need to do? Now, in class Square we need to write a default constructor. You're supposed to remember that constructors have the same name as the class, so in class Square, constructor will look like this. Public Square. Parameter list empty for the default constructor, and let's go ahead and let the side length equal the unit square 1.0. There we go. Now when we run it, we should see that this square has side length 1. There it is. All right. Remember, you can pause at any time, rewind. I recommend that because we are moving fast. Now we need to write a constructor that takes a double parameter for the side length. Well, if we need a parameter, we can overload the constructor, public square, double. We can call it side value, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it side value, and I'm going to assign side length equal to side val. Now, if we try to declare square 2 and initialize it with 25, in TestSquare, we can create square SQR2 equals new square 25. We should get a square with side length system.out.println SQR2. Let's go ahead and run that, and hopefully we see a square with side 25, because that's square 2. Moving right along, we should now throw in a legal argument exception if the parameter is less than or equal to 0. So in class square, what happens if somebody tries to create a side with a value that's less than or equal to 0? We need to throw, keyword, a new illegal argument exception. And we'll say side length cannot be negative. Or how about this? Must be positive. Oh boy. All right, must be positive. There we are. And then we'll have else side length equals side value. Okay. And then when we run it again, everything should work exactly the same. But if you try to make something of side length negative, see what happens. It's not going to let you. New exception. Remember this red stuff here? This is what we wrote. We wrote this. Side length must be positive. Great. Couple more very quick things. All we need to do right now is write an accessor and a modifier method. Those are next. Accessor methods give you access to the private data. So an accessor method like this, accessor method might be public double get side length. It's called a getter, and all it does is return side length. That way we have access to the private data. So in TestSquare, if I needed to print something, let's put this back to positive 25. If I needed to print something here, suppose I needed to system.out.println something like the perimeter. Maybe I could print 4 times SQR2 times 4 times SQR2 dot get side length. Therefore, I can get the side length from the square. I can access it and print it and get the perimeter. Look at the perimeter is 100. Way to go. Now, we also have ideas where we could modify the private data. And these are called modifier methods, where we could be a public, and then this would be void set side length, and this will take a double value, side val. And let's go ahead, and all we do here is set side length equal to side val. So if you wanted to do something where you could actually change the side length, if we needed to maybe double the length of the square, something like that, in your client code, you could do something like SQR2 dot set side length, and maybe we can set it to equal to 50 instead. Then if we printed it again, we should see a side length of 50. Really, that's about it for right now. What you've done is you successfully created a class called Square. Look at that. Look at all we've done. You've got the constructor. You've got another constructor, an overloaded constructor. You've got an accessor method, get side length. You've got set side length, the modifier method. We've got the toString method, so we can print our squares. You created an entire class, which was the client code, where we declared one square variable here. We declared another square variable here. We modified the square. We printed it. We did a lot of things with it. Hopefully you get this in there and everything works well. I'm going to have some other instructions on the website that you're going to use to perhaps write a couple of more methods in and test them in class Square. And then when we get back, you're going to actually create a class called Rectangle. I hope things worked out for you.